So, Warner Brothers wanted to make a Justice League movie. They were establishing their own DC cinematic universe, the DC extended universe, if you will. So they basically wanted to have everything interconnected. They're going to go on from Man of Steel, and they did Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, and then Wonder Woman, and then Justice League. So while they were making Justice League, it came about at a very chaotic time. Basically, Warner Brothers was basically trying to wrestle away films from their directors to retool them. They realized that oh man, something isn't working here. These aren't testing well. We've got to regroup here. Like the Marvel films are kicking our ass. We got to do something. So they wrestled away a bunch of films from some of the directors. The first one that comes to mind obviously is Suicide Squad. David Ayer, after with a script that he wrote in 6 weeks and just shot so much for editing, and then it tested well with Warner Brothers, so they wrestled the film away from him and basically edited it up to be more the theory is they edited it up to be more punchy. They essentially handed the film over to a what's it called, Trailer Park, which is a editing studio that does movie trailers. So if Suicide Squad looks chaotically edited and weird with reshoots, stuff like that, that's why. Justice League also became a victim of this as well. Justice League, apparently, with everything that they had shot, Warner Brothers wasn't happy with it. It wasn't testing well. And this all happened very early within what's known as the assembly cut. So, little history here. So, because a lot of people think this narrative is just that, Snyder completed the film and Warner Brothers didn't like it and they forced Josh Whedon to do reshoots. A little more complicated than that. I'm sure everyone has gone over this by now, but just in case, let's just reiterate it here. Zack Snyder was working on an assembly cut. An assembly cut is when you shoot everything that you have for a film. It's all on there in just this one big timeline. It's kind of in sequential order, but nothing is really finished. The special effects are not finished, so obviously stuff with Cyborg wouldn't be completed. Your character Steppenwolf is not there. There might be stand-ins. You might have some storyboards or some very basic CGI blocking here and there, but essentially the film was not finished in the assembly cut. So looking at the assembly cut, Warner Brothers basically, it's seemingly kind of cut Snyder off the project. I mean, there's some conflicting reports about how this affected him with his family, who was dealing with the death of a child at the time. But essentially, it was turned over to Josh Whedon, and Josh Whedon had to basically take everything that Snyder had shot up to that point and then dice it up and make the 2017 director's Whedon version that we saw in theaters. And so a lot of people were under the impression that because Snyder did an assembly cut, that he was in the initial phase of production, that there was a Snyder cut. And so this weird hashtag started up for the longest time, release the Snyder cut, release the Snyder cut, as though Warner Brothers was just sitting on this version and that they were, that they weren't going to release it. This was a huge misconception in 2017 when, and we still, this has had a resurgence within film news for a while, which I find weird, which is that, which is the theory that, there are these director's cuts that are just that are ready to release on the, on the cutting room floor. And the thing is that they're not. So the thing is they're assembly cuts. So we had this for the longest time in 2017. They were saying stuff like, oh man, there's a 3-hour cut of The Last Jedi, or there's a 4-hour cut of Blade Runner 2049. There isn't. There's an assembly cut. There's a cut where you have all this footage that isn't really completed, and there's no visual effects there that are finished that make up the assembly cut. It happened with Black Panther. I think Black Panther said there's a 3.5-hour cut of that. There isn't. We're still reporting on this now. There's this report that there's the Mission Impossible Fallout had a 4-hour cut. No, it didn't. It had an assembly cut. It wasn't finished. There's a similar example of how this happened with another DC film, Superman 2. Superman 2 was a film where Richard Donner started work on it and basically left Warner Brothers over creative differences. It was passed on to another director. And basically, during an interview with Margot Kidder, she basically said, oh, there's a Richard Donner cut of the film. It was so great, and they should release that. When in fact, the cut wasn't finished because, like, for one, Donner didn't finish shooting everything, so everything in his version wasn't ready. Now, of course, yes, we did get the Richard Donner cut on DVD, but the thing is, it was not just like something they plucked off the shelf. It had to be assembled, and basically Donner had to rely on footage that was already shot. He had to rely on test footage, and he had to integrate special effects back into the film. Most notably about the difference between Superman 2, the theatrical cut, and the Donner cut, is that they got footage back for Marlon Brando used in the film. Like in the theatrical cut, Marlon Brando's presence for the hologram of Jor-El wasn't used, and they got the rights back to it around the time of Superman Returns. So they put it back into the film. So basically, yeah, like Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, it could be made, but it wasn't like a release of it. It's not like it was just like sitting in the vaults and it had just be plucked off and just thrown onto HBO Max. It had to be made. Same thing as, the Superman 2. It had to be assembled. So what you're essentially doing is you're making another film here. And it pretty much is. Like, I mean, to its credit, there is a lot that's different in Snyder's cut from the from Whedon's cut. The ending's a lot different. There's more time for character development. There's better designs of the characters, and we get to know a little bit more about the villains of Darkseid. So a lot of people, kind of feel vindicated. They feel like Snyder had robbed them of a great Justice League film. And speaking as someone who kind of dug the Whedon Justice League film, like it wasn't a perfect film, but it did have a lot of elements that I was hoping to see in a Justice League film that did come about. And thankfully, it seemed like the DCU was learning a little bit from the mistakes here and there. After seeing that and then coming to Zack Snyder's Justice League, I'm still kind of like, I don't really feel different. Like, I mean, there are aspects of Snyder's film that I like more than the Whedon cut, but at the same time, there's all these other problems with a Zack Snyder film that are new here that just don't work. That, like, to its credit though, I will say this is the most Zack Snyder of Zack Snyder films ever made. Like, all of his hallmarks are present here. The slow motion is absurd. It's all over the place. It goes on for too long. The pretentiousness of the characters, like holding stuff up more seriously than it should be, with almost this kind of like unaware tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, is frothing throughout this film. The dramatic staging too, to make it seem like every single shot is way more important than it really is, which is, more of that pretentiousness, is in full force. So to its credit, I will say this: if you really dig Zack Snyder's films, like, the other thing too, forgot to mention is the Christ imagery. Snyder always has this like huge Christ imagery in his stuff, and here it's full force with everything it has. So to its credit, if you're a big Zack Snyder film fan, if you like his stuff, this is probably going to be really high up on your list if you love all the stuff he does, and you're willing to love it to a degree that it gets ridiculous. If you love slow motion and you want it in chunks, huge long stretches, you will get that in this film. If you love like his Christ allegories that are in full force, you will get that in this film. If you like scenes that linger for too long and have this like grandiose nature to it, you will love this film. All that being said, I wish I could love this film more. Like I don't have an issue with it being 4 hours for most of it. Like, to its credit, the film works better because we do get to focus a lot more on Victor Stone, Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher. And clearly, like, Cyborg is the more central character who we get to know in this film. He has a better arc. We get to learn more about his origins, his moral questioning of what he wants out of life, his relationship to his father. He has a lot of development here, which I think is really great. Because like here's a character who we're introduced to in Justice League, and instead of feeling like rushed where it was in the previous film, here it feels like it's pretty much the Cyborg film, more or less. We get to know a lot about Cyborg. He plays the heaviest role. He has a lot to do, and I really did genuinely like him in there. I wish I could say the same for Flash. I mean, the motivations for Flash, I think, are better in the Snyder Cut. But his first introduction, I thought was just awful. Mostly because, like, it's, it involves, like, so Ezra Miller, playing Barry Allen, the Flash, is trying to get his dad out of jail by taking on an odd job so that he can, attain a law degree and basically get his dad out of prison. He has a lot of... I mean, you do get to understand a little bit more of his plight. Some of it was in the previous film, but you do get to understand a lot more of that. His opening scene where he stops a woman from being killed in a car crash just feels like par for the course and elongated to such a degree where you have, like, the slow motion sesame seed that causes the crash, and the extensive scene that follows of Flash saving this woman from flying out of her car and getting into a car wreck. It's a good scene that shows that he's a hero kind of working in the shadows, but at the same time it goes on for so long with that slow motion that it is time for a full music video. And you're going to find that throughout the film this is the case. Anytime there is like a slow motion sequence, the film has more than enough time to play an entire music track to make it a music video. Like Aquaman walks out onto a pier to basically take a drink and take a dip into Atlantis. All shot in slow motion, all given enough time to let this music play throughout. And you'll find this happens way too often in the film. I did like the fact that we got more of Darkseid. I love that we learned a little bit more about Steppenwolf and why he's doing what he does. Why there's more desperation to him. You understand why he wants to conquer instead of just being your standard villain of the week who thinks that, conquest is cool. Here we reveal that he's working for Darkseid to pay off a debt. And he actually kind of I love that Darkseid is presented as more fearful here. However, in order to present that fearfulness, we get once more another series of dream sequences. We got them in Batman v Superman, and here we get 3 times as many about speculation on the future. And wow, does it go on for so long? Especially the epilogue is just it's an extended sequence from Batman v Superman of Nightfall, where Batman has that dream that, he's going to live in a world where Darkseid takes over. And Superman is, controlled by Darkseid, and he has to work alongside villains, and a lot of people that he's loved and known are dead, and that he has to work alongside the Joker. And it's another prologue scene, and it feels like a whole lot of nothing. We also introduce a lot of characters who appeared in other films. Like we get Willem Dafoe from Aquaman is in here. He doesn't really do anything except, push Aquaman a little bit further, but there isn't much to him than that. We also get the Martian Manhunter in 2 scenes that mean nothing. Like, when they first introduce him, they reveal it as kind of like a shock, like, oh, this character who you've known since Man of Steel, in a small supporting role, is actually the Martian Manhunter. And you're like, okay, but why? Like, especially the scene they introduce him is in a crucial moment where Martha Kent is trying to connect with Lois Lane after the death of Superman. And it's a very tender moment, but when you reveal that Martian Manhunter was kind of in on this scene, it's kind of both it kind of robs that scene of a resonance for the character, and also kind of robs it of what you can do with Martian Manhunter. Because is this all that he's gonna do? And by the end of the film, that's the last scene. They introduce just Martian Manhunter. It's oh, wait, by the way, he's here. Maybe he'll show up in another film, maybe. And it's just, it feels like this film, it does have a little bit more completeness to it when, by the time the film ends and the Flash has to spin back time a bit, which I thought was pretty cool. It's a classic Donner move there. I especially dug the way that they dispatched with Steppenwolf and basically make themselves more of a threat known to Darkseid, but it still feels like they're teasing to another film that I don't know if it will come. I mean, yeah, Warner Brothers is willing to spend the 80, I think it was 80 to $100 million for this redo, but are they really going to keep going with this? I don't know. I don't know if they could keep going with this. They might. I mean, but I mean, like, well, like how, because now they're starting this whole restore the Snyderverse thing, and I don't know how that's gonna work. I don't know if Warner Brothers is gonna be willing to do that. If you know, they might depending on the reaction to it. But as it stands, like, this feels like a Justice League that it still feels like the 2017 film. It feels like it's almost there. It's almost that Justice League film that I want. It almost has that resonance, this story of like the new gods that they keep harping on, which I did like that sequence where they show Darkseid's origins, which that was really cool, especially since we get more of the Green Lanterns in that scene. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, so I love that. But it just feels like, and it also, like, the other thing too is like this one was rated R, and it feels like it's it's a lot like Batman v Superman. It's a soft R, where it feels like it has to amp up so much to make it R-rated. Like, there's a scene where pretty much any scene where someone is thrown into a wall, there's like huge blood splatter behind them. Which clearly looks like CG blood, which is like added in there. It's like, oh, we really need to make it R-rated. And yeah, Batman says the F word and stuff like that. There is some gore here and there, which kind of warrants it, so it's fine. But I couldn't help but think of the film from last year we had, a direct-to-video film called Apocalypse War, which actually does show this invasion by Darkseid of Earth that Snyder keeps teasing in all these films, and actually has it very violent and gritty and brutal, and feels like it has a sense of completeness that has like this level of hope and despair and just this gruesome brutality to it that, maybe I don't know. It's like, it's similar to how I felt after like Assault on Arkham, comparing it to Suicide Squad. I feel like if we do have another Justice League film, it's going to have that comparison where, okay, if you are going to have this war, if you are going to go full Nightfall, like the premonitions keep saying, hopefully, if that's Snyder's intent here, I don't know if he's going to keep doing it, but if that's the intent, then I don't know if, I don't know how close of a comparison that's going to be. Because, like, I remember that being a big thing. Oh, Batman's going to say the F word. And then I remember, like, well, in Apocalypse War, like, I think, like, 5 characters, like, say the F word at some point. And a lot of times, it doesn't feel like it's made to be, like, punctuating. It just feels like something that happens within that story. So I wish I could like the film more, but it's not even so much that it goes on for too long. It's just that I think it elongates so many scenes that don't need to be elongated. You can do more. I mean, I appreciate the stuff that Snyder puts into the film, but there's still so much to it that I'm like, man, you don't need this. And the fact that you're introducing characters like Martian Manhunter and throwing Willem Dafoe into the mix here, it doesn't feel like it warrants it. Like, there's so many scenes that still feel like, okay, this doesn't work. I don't know why you have this here. So yeah, it's not a bad film. Like, here and there, it actually kind of works. I did really enjoy the film. I never found myself fully bored, even though I was kind of laughing at some points where, like, Aquaman is hailed by this community that apparently smells his clothes whenever he runs off to the ocean. Souvenirs, I guess. But yeah, like, it's almost there. It's still, like, it feels like I didn't feel the same way when I watched Superman 2, the Donner Cut. Where I feel like, okay, actually, this fixes a lot. This actually works better. I'm looking at the Snyder Cut, and I'm still like, yeah, there's a lot that I could understand why Warner Bros. Would want to cut some of this stuff here. I mean, I don't fully agree with Whedon's cut. Obviously, there's stuff in there that doesn't work. Like, I don't think the romantic tension between Wonder Woman and Batman in the Whedon cut, I don't think that works. Mostly because it's relegated to, like, 2 scenes, and they do nothing. But yeah, like, I mean, I do appreciate the effort here, because I do like the film, but it doesn't need a lot of the stuff that's there. So I'm still just kind of left going, oh, okay, well, it's still almost the Justice League movie I wanted, so. Oh, boy.